Ladies and gentlemen, it's game week for 2022. The Florida Gators play this Saturday. I'm excited. We're going to talk about it on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're available daily, free, wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy Monday. I'm Brandon Olson. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Written work with Whole Nine Sports and GiantsCountryOfSI.com. Like, subscribe, comment, review, share it, do whatever it is you want to do. It's greatly appreciated. It's game week. And yeah, we're going to have fun this Thursday, September 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, social at Midtown in Gainesville, live Locked On Gators recording this Friday, September 2nd, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, obviously, social at Midtown in Gainesville, live Locked On Gators recording, and we're going to have a blast before, after, and in between. It's going to be a good time. But today we're talking about the defensive game plan against Utah. I'm not going to do this as in-depth every week, but I figured, this week we don't have a game this past weekend to talk about, so we don't have to worry about reviewing or anything like that. We just get to preview. And yeah, we're focusing on defense today, offense tomorrow. But when we're talking about the defense, we'd be remiss if we did not talk about the coined phrase that everybody talks about when you talk about Patrick Toney, creepers. I'm going to explain to you what creepers is, but when you look at this Florida Gators defense, expect to see a good deal of man coverage. Patrick Toney it's not a secret. He likes calling man coverage. That's his kind of primary coverage when he's not calling creepers, which creepers is not this thing that he calls every play. But when he likes to work in just normal defense, man coverage is kind of the way he goes, or at least using man principles, because Patrick Toney has shown that he also likes to call quarters coverage, which is a hybrid with man principles as well. So that's what we're talking about there. But it's straight up man-to-man quarters. But again, the headliner is creepers. That's what everybody's talking about. And we've talked about it before on the show, exactly what creepers are. But, the show has grown, exponentially since then. But so we're talking about creepers here, and creepers are a replacement blitz that sends a non-traditional rusher to the passer in exchange for dropping a traditional rusher into coverage. So what that means is, let's say you got 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers. A linebacker's coming in, but you're not blitzing. You're not setting 5. A linebacker comes in and a D tackle drops into coverage, for example. And there you go. You got 4 people rushing. You've got still 7 in coverage, but you've got a non-traditional rusher coming in that linebacker, but the defensive lineman is dropping back into coverage. And then voila. That's essentially as quick and simple as I can explain creepers there. And as Patrick Toney has described it before, because he's talked about it endlessly. Because again, it seems like everybody, when they're like, "Oh, Patrick Toney," it's just like creepers is the one thing they know. So as Patrick Toney has said, you get to create the same amount of pressure as you would with a blitz. Like if you get to create the same amount of pressure with 4 as you would if you were rushing 5, and at the same time, you're not sacrificing coverage like you would by sending 5 or more players and blitzing. Because obviously when you blitz, oftentimes you're then leaving the back end susceptible. If you don't create pressure here, you're sending the same amount of pressure, but you've still got 7 in coverage, and that kind of saves your tail a little bit. It also makes the quarterback not have as many quick dump off and easy read options. So then you kind of give your pressure a little bit more time to get there as well. So it's just everything working hand in hand. And I think the Florida Gators defense you'll see is about as team-based as you can get. Creepers especially is something where it's like, you need to work together as a team. If you succeed, your teammates succeed, then everything works out. That's kind of the approach. 10 of the 11 defenders are threats to I guess you could say blitz or to rush the passer. The only person who is not a threat in this Patrick Toney defense to rush the passer is the far side corner, the field corner. So if you're on the left hash, just know that right corner, he's going to be in coverage. Like he's not rushing. That's not something you're going to see from Patrick Toney. He doesn't do it. He has said that. Like he's like, look, like the far corner, field corner, not a threat at all. Because I mean, if he rushes, by the time he even gets there, the play's going to be done. But also, there's going to be so much space where you can't just drop a defensive lineman there, and you can send a linebacker. Where it's also a little weird because like you're dropping players into areas that they don't usually drop in as well, where that linebacker could be asked to play that far flat or that far end of the field, depending on whatever coverage you're in. So you could be asking him to play that far side where it's like you don't really want to send a linebacker all the way out there, especially because by the time he gets there, unless he's already showing it, which is defeating the purpose, unless he's already showing it, then you're going to have an easy completion over there on that far side. So that's why the far corner will never be the rusher there. But that very close corner, that boundary right there, could come in and have a quick, clean run. I think we'll see that quite a bit. We also don't know at this point yet if Florida's going to work with near corners and far corners or play side, field side, whatever you want to call them. We don't know if they're going to work with that approach or if they're just going to go left or right or they're going to match up based on where the receivers are. We don't really know what's going to happen there because we could say, look, Jason Marshall's always going to be that field corner because he's your best cover man, so he's not going to be the one that's rushing. You're not going to take him out of coverage. We don't know that. We could also say, whoever is the best rusher as a corner could always be that close corner so that he can rush. There's a lot going on there where, that field corner, never going to be rushing. That's just not something that you see. But you could see, a safety rush from the left side, but a defensive lineman from the right side is the one that drops back and everybody else kind of just shifts and kind of just rotates over. So you're not just like dropping that same linebacker into a zone that was abandoned or whatever it is. That's not what it is. Patrick Toney with this defense, as he has been quoted saying, you make the same things look different and the different things look the same. Because a lot of college quarterbacks specifically, this is still a thing with NFL quarterbacks as well, but a lot of college quarterbacks specifically are capable of making pre-snap reads, just see what the defense is showing you and be like, okay, that's what they're showing. That's how they're playing, or you don't want to say that's what they're playing just based on what they're showing, but that's what they're showing. And then they can make post-snap reads. You go, okay, this is what they're actually doing. But it is very different from just making pre-snap, post-snap reads. It's very different to see something pre-snap and have it look entirely different post-snap. I've said this before. It was Ron Roberts who, he's the guy where Dave Aranda and Patrick Toney come from his coaching tree, where Ron Roberts has said, you never want to give them that same look. You never want to give the quarterback the same look pre-snap as they get post-snap. That's something where you always want to make them think. That's why I'm always like, oh, this Florida Gators defense, they want to outsmart their opponent because you want to make that quarterback take that extra second or two to think and try to process the coverage. And then that's extra time that your rushers can get in. So you're going to see very different things. So quarterbacks, college quarterbacks specifically, they struggle when it looks completely different. If they're showing cover 2 and it's cover 3, then sure, like that's something you should be anticipating if you're a quarterback at any point. But if they're showing cover 2, and we'll say in this example, they're playing cover 2, but it's cover 2 invert and everybody's in a different spot. And then, the corner on the left is coming down for the flat. The corner on the right is dropping back and he's playing the deep half. One of the safeties is playing the hook. One of the linebackers is playing the flat and one of the other safeties is playing the deep. It looks very different to see all that movement. And you're like, what coverage am I looking at right now? And then by the time you even see it, you're sacked. And that's or at least pressured. And that's one of the things where Coach Vass on Twitter, if you don't follow him, you should. His Patreon also has Patrick Toney doing a little bit of work there, but or had Patrick Toney doing a little bit of work there. But that's Coach Vass he's got shirts that says, the quarterback can't see with tears in his eyes. That's pretty much what it is, where you want to make them panic, you want to make them kind of crumble a little bit, and you want to make them make some mistakes there. We're about to talk about how creepers could actually be used against Utah and how we'll see it put into effect this coming Saturday. But first, a quick word from NHTSA, which is I mean, I've said this before. Like, I like to think I'm an open book here. This one does touch base with me a little bit. I lost a teammate of mine in early 2021 due to a drunk driver. So when you're hanging out with friends and you're putting back a few drinks, especially now during college football season and during football season in general, when people are going out more, they're starting to have drinks at bars more. A few drinks because of a few too many, and then the evening comes and people are starting to head home, and you're like, you know what? Should I call for a ride? But I drove. I don't want to come pick up my car tomorrow morning. I live close enough where it's like I can make this easy trip home and it's no big deal. It is a big deal. That's stupid. Everybody knows the risks of drunk driving, as you all should. The results are tragic and deadly, and still, I will never understand why people still do it. Why you still drink and get behind the wheel? You're like, I'm a good drunk driver. There's no such thing, dummy. Like, that's just not a thing. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives, not just yourself, but others as well. Drive sober or get pulled over. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And now we're talking about how this Creepers defense that we just explained last segment, we're talking about how it's going to be put into effect against Utah. Because one of the best things about Creepers is that its arguably biggest strength is against RPO, the run pass option, which is if you're watching TV and you see what looks like a play action and they quickly throw it to the slant or whatever it is, a lot of times that's the RPO. And I say whatever it is, it could be a bubble screen, it could be a wide screen, it could be a bunch of things. But Creepers is pretty good against it because a lot of times when you're running that RPO, you are looking at that play side defender. If let's say I'm Cam Rising in this case, I'm the Utah quarterback in this case. And I'm saying, sorry if you're listening and not watching, but if you're watching, congrats. Let's say I'm Cam Rising and I'm working back here and I've got Tavion Thomas, we'll say, is the running back. He's on my right side. So I'm here. Tavion Thomas is on my right side. I snap the ball and I'm holding the ball in front of him and we're kind of working at that mesh point. I'm reading, we'll say, in this case, Ventrell Miller. So I'm reading Ventrell Miller. If Ventrell Miller runs in at me, I'm throwing the slant real quick. I'm hitting that slant. I'm picking up any extra yardage we can get. And we're just going, hey, if you can get yards after the catch, get yards after the catch. So I'm running this little mesh point, and Ventrell Miller runs in. I'm throwing a slant. Guess what happens when Creepers is in effect and utilized properly? That backside, that backside linebacker that I just read, he's coming in. But that backside end, who in this case might be, we'll say, Brenton Cox Jr., drops back into coverage. Or Prince Liam Mealing drops back into coverage. And then I'm throwing this slant right into traffic. That's the point about Creepers. That's how Creepers is so effective against the RPO. And that's one of the ways they can address it. So when you look at the RPO, Cam Rising, who was just me, by the way, similar hair if I put it down, but Cam Rising had an RPO or a screen on 13.9% of his passes in 2021, according to Clark Brooks. And the important part here is that a lot of RPOs are based around reading that backside linebacker, specifically, of course, because that's where you're running the mesh. When it's the same thing when you run just a read option, you're reading that backside defensive end because then you take it, and that's what happens. If he stands up, then you hand it off. If he runs in, you take it. Here, he runs in, you throw the ball. He stands up, you hand it off. It's the same thing, except instead of the quarterback running, you throw a slant, although there also are plays where the quarterback runs it. So, yes, but that's the important part about talking about the RPO. Dropping that backside end means that the quarterback, who dropping back here again, means that the quarterback who is likely trying to throw the ball to that slant, guess what? He's got that defender in his way. And the thing is also, it's not just about getting a defender in the way. It's Florida's coaching these defensive ends on both sides and defensive tackles and whoever it is. They're coaching them who, when you drop back into coverage, which is not going to be super often, but when you do, when you're dropping into coverage, you're not just dropping back, but you're reading that quarterback and you're watching him. If he's getting ready to throw that ball, you get hands up, you do whatever you can. You create just havoc. That's the point of it. That's why when we're talking about Cam Rising, looking at that slant, he's reading Ventrell Miller. Ventrell Miller is running in on him. And you throw that quick little, that pitch and catch, that slant right there. So that's why we're talking about bringing out that Creepers against Utah is specifically Utah. Kentucky's going to do it a lot. Don't play Bama this year, but Bama did it a lot last year. They did it a lot the year before with Mac Jones as well. So a lot of teams now are just picking up more RPO. If you watch Nebraska versus Northwestern, a lot of it was kind of just quick read, quick catch. That's what teams are trying to do now. That's why creepers is so effective when it's like, okay, like this is what we're seeing. Snap the ball, complete change. A defensive end is dropping back into coverage. A corner is rushing from the left side. Everything changes, and that's why we're talking about you kind of disrupt that quick pitch and catch motion that they're trying to work on. So that's how creepers is going to be used against Utah, I believe. And for the Utah game specifically, I'm looking at this and I'm saying that backside safety or the backside linebacker should be rushing often. I think that you shouldn't really worry about the play side because I'm dropping back again. Let's say we're in this situation. I'm in shotgun right now. I've got Tavion Thomas on the right to me. I'm Cam Rising. If I'm running that RPO, you should not be dropping the end on the play side. The end on the left side should not be dropping. That should be Javon Dexter because he's playing end now. So that should be Javon Dexter staying there and not dropping. You want them engaged. The backside defender is the one that should be dropping because if they're running that RPO and Tavion Thomas is running to the left and Javon Dexter's dropping back into coverage, guess what? That's extra yards if he bounces it out wide a little bit. And also that gives you that left tackle room to run at Javon Dexter and pick up more momentum where they kind of just it puts Florida at a big disadvantage. So I'm sending we'll say Trey Dean in this case is on that right side on the back side, and we'll say Ventrell Miller is on the back side. I'm sending one of them and I'm dropping back that backside defensive end who, whether it's Princely, Brenton Cox Jr., Chief Borders, whoever it is, they're going in that set in that formation, they're going to be dropping back because they can create a little bit of havoc there, and we want them rushing because it's also having that extra backside defender to kind of wall off Cam Rising. I mentioned, the quarterback similar to the read option, instead of just if they run in, quarterback keeps it. If they run in, quarterback throws the ball. But guess what? Quarterback could also keep it. There are a lot of RPOs where quarterback gets to keep it if he wants to and run it like a read option as well, or he can run it like a read option and still dump it off. So if you have, let's say, Trey Dean or Ventrell Miller rushing in, you wall off that opportunity for Cam Rising to turn this RPO into a run, pass option, into a read option and take it off. So you have that extra backside defender to wall off Cam Rising from run. And again, he's not Anthony Richardson, but he can pick up yards in a hurry. And if I'm Utah and I see that Florida keeps dropping that backside end and rushing, I'm calling counters. I'm calling RPOs with bubble screens. I'm trying to kind of establish that, hey, we're going to go back and forth. And Utah's got a great coaching staff. Kyle Whittingham is one of the better defensive minds, which is also like he's the defensive mind. He can probably figure out the weak points of this Florida defense, and he could probably figure it out pretty quickly. So if I'm Utah and I see that they keep dropping that backside defensive end, I'm going to run counters. I'm going to run bubbles. And I'm going to try to okay, we adjusted. It's your turn to adjust now. And now we're about to talk about how Florida can match up personnel-wise against Utah. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. To wrap up today's show, we're talking about how Florida can match up personnel-wise against the Utah Utes this Saturday, September 3rd. It's going to be a big one. And everybody that talks about Utah, everybody that supports Utah, you go, 13 personnel. Wow, we have that. That's my impression of Utah fans now. Utah, they love running 13 personnel. For those who don't know, 13 personnel, 1 running back, 3 tight ends, 1 wide receiver. And I will say, yes, they do that. They go heavy, and a lot of college teams don't do that. So you're not used to it. You got Utah that does it. You've got Iowa that does it. You've got Wisconsin that'll do it. And those are 3 of the teams really that'll do it consistently. A lot of teams will do it very rarely, but Utah, Iowa, Wisconsin will do it consistently. Stanford will do it pretty consistently. You might see Florida do it every now and then with just what we're looking at on roster right now, so you could see that as well. Although I will say Utah has 2 tight ends that are that I will consider legitimate threats here. Where I also I don't care about Cam Rising 15 yards per completion in 13 personnel as as Brian Brown brought up in our group chat the other day. As much as I love him, I don't care about that. I don't care about anything else. I'm talking about who Utah has personnel-wise and how Florida can match up with them. I would expect Brandon Keith, who is the better receiving option, I think, amongst the tight ends. Although you could also argue, there's not necessarily a better receiving option. They're just different. But I expect Brandon Keith to be matched up with Trey Dean. Trey Dean, great size, athleticism. We've seen him work as a safety, as an occasional corner, as that star role. I'd expect to see Trey Dean and Brandon Keith matched up. I've said before, I think Trey Dean can be a tight end eraser if he's given proper guidance. And I think with Corey Raymond and Patrick Toney on staff, you're getting that proper guidance. So I'd love to see Trey Dean match up with Brandon Keith. Brandon Keith is also the tight end that plays a lot of the slot or flexed out spots. So you're not going to see him. I mean, he's going to be in line a lot, but you're also going to see him moved out wide and moved into the slot, which in line, he plays about 50% of his snaps. The other 50% are in the slot or out wide, occasionally in the backfield. I know some people are saying he's going to be an H-back in the NFL. We're not talking about the NFL right now. But Brandon Keith and Trey Dean, that's who I would expect to be matched up there. That big safety, that athletic safety with that athletic pass-catching option for Utah. And then looking at Dalton Kincaid on the inside, I'd expect to see DeJuan Black or Shamar James line up over him, especially if he's in line at that time. I expect DeJuan Black or Shamar James. Love Ventrell Miller. I think he's a fantastic player, but I don't think that you should be like, hey, go man up with this. Because again, Florida's going to play a good deal of man coverage. I think when you see Ventrell Miller, you go, okay, man up on whoever the running back is for Utah at that point. Obviously, Tavion Thomas is starter. Whoever's on the field at that time, Ventrell Miller should be matched up against them because guess what? If they're running out of the backfield, Ventrell, he's not amazing in coverage, but he should be smart enough to be like, hey, that looks like an angle, that looks like a flat, whatever it might be. He's also not going to be matched up against these tight ends, which would be fantastic because he will be, I think, more exposed at that point, just given how often Cam Rising likes to pass to the tight end. But also with Ventrell, you could play him in a hook zone underneath if you're in cover one, we'll say, with Trey Dean on Keith, DeJuan Black on Kincaid, and Rashad Torrance deep over the middle. And you kind of get to work with that where Ventrell Miller can kind of be watching that running back, or he could be in a hook zone. And if he's a man on the running back, if the running back stays him to pass protect, he can blitz in, he can rush in, and he can kind of try to cause a little bit of havoc there. So that's what my expectation would be with DeJuan Black or Shamar James on Kincaid, Trey Dean on Keith. I also wouldn't be shocked if we saw someone like Donovan McMillan on Keith, just because, again, I think that Keith has good enough size where I wouldn't want Rashad Torrance necessarily matched up against him a ton in man coverage, but it could happen. I think the front six that we see a lot for Florida this week is Gervon Dexter and Princely Umanmielen at the ends, although Gervon Dexter kind of still playing the same D tackle role, is just listed as an end. Jalen Lee and Desmond Watson rotating in at the nose, especially against this Utah line. You want to have these two gapping types. I know Sean Spencer has said, look, we don't want these guys to just be these two gapping nose tackles. I think against Utah, you kind of have to be. So Jalen Lee and Desmond Watson, especially with a new center for Utah, I think that you should watch them at the nose. Brenton Cox is going to be that rush linebacker end hybrid. I'm sure we'll see him play similar to Will Anderson, where he's listed as an outside linebacker. It's that 3-4 style where he's listed as an outside linebacker. He plays a lot of stand-up edge. He plays a lot of hand in the dirt. He rotates around. I think we'll see Princely play hand up, hand in the dirt. We'll see him work around that a lot. We'll see 2-4-5 situation here where there's two down linemen and Gervon Dexter and either Lee or Watson or Humphreys. And then we'll see Umanmielen and Brenton Cox Jr. standing up on the ends, or Chief Borders and Brenton Cox Jr. standing up on the ends. And you kind of give yourself a lot of room. Ventrell Miller will likely be the Mike linebacker there, that middle linebacker. DeJuan Black and Shamar James will rotate as the other linebacker because, again, nickel is the base defense now in football. That's what it is. So you'll see DeJuan Black or Shamar James as the better pass cover linebacker there. Maybe Derek Wingo comes in for Ventrell Miller every now and then, and you kind of got a well-rounded group, and you kind of see some stuff there. I also wouldn't be shocked if we saw Florida kind of go, okay, Utah's in 13 personnel. That's a very, very heavy set. I just punched my monitor. That's very, very heavy set there. You got Princely Maylene and Brenton Cox Jr. as the defensive ends, or one of them with a hand up, whatever it is. Javon Dexter and Jalen Lee or Desmond Watson at D tackle. You have Ventrell Miller, Shamar James, and DeJuan Black all on the field in the box at the same time. And I think you can kind of look at that. You could also say, hey, guess what? Javon Dexter, Jalen Lee, and Desmond Watson are all on the field, as well as Brenton Cox Jr. as that backside player. And he drops back if need be, or he could rush, and you kind of just stack the box there, because I think that's something you have to do against Utah. The hardest part with Utah is stacking the box to stuff the run against an offensive line that likes to get physical with 3 tight end sets. So stacking the box there, but also with tight ends that are versatile enough to be pass catchers. So you don't want to sacrifice coverage. And that's the most difficult part here. I think if Florida can manage that area specifically, just work those seams in coverage while also having big enough players in the box and strong enough players in the box to stop the run and match up there, I think that really improves Florida's chances at winning. But tomorrow, we're going to talk about the Florida Gators offense. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day, especially today. Now make your second listen Locked On SEC, hosted by Chris Gordy of Sports 790. Get the best coverage on the best conference, including the best university, University of Florida. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole 9 Sports and Giants Country of SI.com. And I will see you all tomorrow.